Robert, one of the things that seems to remain uppermost in, particularly for organisations, is this whole issue of leadership. Never seems to go away. So I'd be really interested in your thoughts about leadership.
About leadership, yeah. Well, I mean, I think first of all, why is leadership stay important? Is because leadership is necessary when things are changing in times of adversity, change, challenge. Management, when people often distinguish leadership from management, management is really good at taking what's already working and making it more efficient, kind of trying to keep things stable. But people have this deep felt need for leadership when A, things aren't working, so we got to make a change, or B, things are changing and we're trying to find our way. So I think that the whole idea of leading is probably going to, I don't think it's going to be ever something that we're not going to need unless we stop changing and unless that we stop running into challenges or wanting to do something different.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, unless everything suddenly stays the same, we're probably going to continue to need leadership. Okay. And unless, and not only think things stay the same, we have to be happy with how they are. So if things stop changing, we're happy, we'll never need leadership again, but that's not very likely.
Okay, so given that pretty much leadership is going to remain as an issue, we sort of have come through some pretty traumatic times over the last decade, and we've seen leaders that we thought were always going to be there stumble and fall, and others maybe have surprised us by taking on the mantle really well.
Right.
What do you see perhaps as some of the differences now that are required of leaders to be successful in the 21st century?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to distinguish between leader and leadership.
Okay.
So leader is a position, right? Leadership is a capability, and then leading is actually an action. And what I think sometimes happens is that, and this is, if we take this whole notion of change, that what works in one context doesn't work when things change. So that, there's even an old saying that the solution to today's problems is the problem for tomorrow. So but it just means that as the world changes, you cannot continue to do the same thing and expect it to get the same results. I think it was Einstein, his definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting to get a different result. So part of what needs to happen, and this is even the whole notion of success factor modeling, is we have to realize that it is a constant updating, it's a constant search for what works. That being said, I think there's also certain basic fundamental, principles of leadership that will always be what leadership is about. And in success factor modeling, we would say that, first of all, I think to lead anywhere you need two things. Even stepping back further, the word leadership, leading, comes from an old English word, lethon, which means to go. And it doesn't mean power, it doesn't mean control, it doesn't mean coercion, it means to go. So to go somewhere, you need two things. You need a direction, where to go, and then you need energy. And I think still today, those are the two primary things about leadership. Express a direction. What's the direction we're going to go? And a direction is not necessarily a destination. Right? You may not know where it's going to lead you until you get there. So it's got to be a direction. And then you've got to supply energy, right? Impetus, motivation to get there. So if you have no direction, you wander aimlessly. If you have no energy, you're caught in inertia. So I think that these are the two basics that will always be there. Now then, how we provide direction, what direction, how specific, that's going to be key. Which direction we go, that's the part that's going to need to be changing, time by time. And then how do we provide the energy? How do we motivate? And I think that's changed hugely. Is it external motivation? Is it internal motivation? Whose motivation? Where is it coming from? So I think in today's world, there has been a really big evolution, that especially if the direction is a new direction, that is, it's, let's say, towards innovation, the leader, him or herself, may or may not know where it's going to go, but they've got to, let's say, stimulate other people to be involved, to begin to have a kind of a collective intelligence, a collective vision. So I think these are some of the challenges that face today's leaders. One of the things that they say is that the world is too complex for any one person to be able to sort of unilaterally know what to do and where to go. And you've got to actually, we even say that, sort of use the term meta leadership. I've actually got to start leading other leaders. I can't really lead followers. If I'm leading people that are only following, I'm not going to get there. As Steve Jobs used to say, he said one of the big problems is you can't skate to where the puck is if you're playing hockey. I've got to skate to where it's going to be. And so that means I've got to anticipate further. I've got to go beyond. And instead of swarming where it used to be, we've got to start to look for where it's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, interesting, you talked about the energy. One of the, I mean, you know, in the LLI there are 9 qualities for leadership that we have incorporated within the tool. And one of those is around sustainability.
Yes.
And interestingly, some of the research is showing that's one of the key things that people are really aware that they actually haven't got as a quality, and they are concerned about that.
Yeah. So. And I think today, you know, this whole notion of, you know, maybe one of the greatest challenges that faces today's generation is this notion of sustainable development, right? Sustainable success. To not sacrifice the future for the present. That to be able to succeed in a way that does not put at risk for future generations to succeed. And I think that requires an even, you know, sort of greater sense of vision, a greater sense of awareness. You know, they say that, I think that probably the two, if we were to take this idea of direction and energy and you put it into, you know, organizational terms, it's, you know, again, the ability to express a vision. And again, a vision is not necessarily a specific objective, but it's a direction. And then to understand people and their motivations. To understand people and their motivations, which it means that you're trying to, you need what you might call inside-out motivation rather than outside, you know, pressure or even outside reward.